The cost of living, let's say particularly in America, because that's where I am, but it is relative to the rest of the world. But the cost of living in America it's way too high. Like I remember when I was in high school, and there was that guy he was running for, I think it was mayor or governor in New York, but he became a big joke on the internet because he was going around talking about his slogan for his campaign was the rent is too damn high, right? But he wasn't joking, and around that time, that was around 2000, like 11 or 2012, I think. So it's been a good around 15 years since around that time where that guy was saying that, right? I can only imagine what the rent prices in New York are like now compared to then, right? Because the cost of everything just keeps going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, right? And a lot of people do not understand this. You could factually look this up, like back before I was born in the 1990s, right? And this kind of goes for then, but costs have always been rising since the gold and silver standard was taken away from money, and inflation just kept going crazy, right? But basically, housing was a lot easier to secure, right? Like one of my grandfathers, he was telling me that when he had first got here to America, which from what I remember would be the 1970s, right? So basically, around the 1970s, for basically he was making, I think he said around 300 a week, and the rent was 800 per month, right? Like it was something like that, right? So, or it was maybe something like, actually no, 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 I think I got it wrong. From what I remember, I think it was actually he was making about like 150 a week, and the rent was something like 370 or 400. It was something like that, right? But basically, from where my mind had remembered it, that he made his rent money within 2 weeks, right? And mind you, he had roommates as well, because I think it was him and my grandmother, and then one of my aunts, right? So, but I would have to get the story from him to remember it exactly. But I just remember the math on it that way, right? But and remember, this was him coming fresh to America. This is not a guy who went to college and got a degree. He didn't go and do no trade school or whatever. Like no, he was working based off of just what he was able to do, right? And so, but we're at a point in time where it's much, much more difficult for people to do that. Factually, wages have not kept, like, okay, I put in on ChatGPT, I asked it a question. I said, why can't the majority of people in America afford a two-bedroom apartment, right? And that's true at this point, particularly among people who are under the ages of 50, right? Or under the ages of like 40, maybe I would say. But even for a lot of people who are like in their 40s and 50s and even 60s at this point, they cannot even afford a two-bedroom apartment, right? So I asked it to ChatGPT, and it said the short answer is that it's not one problem, it's a stack of systems all pushing in the same direction, right? First, wages haven't kept up with housing costs. Since the 1980s, rent has risen much faster than incomes for most people. Even full time workers often don't earn enough to comfortably cover a two-bedroom without spending way over the recommended 30% of income, right? So, and this is like the thing that's the crazy thing, right? And I think this is probably even sicker and even crazy, right? The people who even can afford the average rent prices right now, right? The people who do make enough money, like say people who make anywhere between like, 5 to 10,000 per month, right? The majority of their money is going to their living space, right? It's either going to rent, mortgage, right? And even if you're whether you're paying rent or mortgage, you got to pay your water bill, you got to pay your light bill, then you have all your other bills such as your internet bill. If you have a car, more than likely you have a car payment that you do, right? And even if you have a used car that you completely paid off, you still have to pay for repairs and maintenance on your car, right? Which can very easily cost maybe around like if you have to change all four tires on your car, even if you're getting used tires, it's probably gonna maybe cost you at least 300, 400, 500, depending on where you're located. Things in the West Coast, on the West Coast, places like California, Washington, and Nevada, things cost a lot more than than like say like Florida. But Florida's been becoming much more rapidly expensive, especially as people have been moving here, right? But that's the craziest thing to me is that even the people who do make a decent amount of money, the majority of their money that they can't even put a good amount of money to the side to save, right? Like somebody who's making, basically put to you this way, if rent was relative to what it was back in the days, like before the 1980s, as this response from ChatGPT is telling me, if rent was even in that area, right? People who make $5,000 a month, they'd be able to save maybe around $2,000 to $3,000 per month, right? They should be able to save about $30,000 within a year, right? And then maybe after around 4 years' time, after paying rent, they'll have enough money to put a down payment on a house that's maybe around $700,000, right? So they'd be able to maybe get a house that's about like 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, or something like that, right? But now it's just impossible, right? Because of how many things is sucking up the money that people are making, right? And now, mind you, the amount of people who are actually making $5,000 to $10,000, those are people who have to go and get very well educated. Those are people who have to spend time doing a lot of schooling, a lot of training, right? They need to have some sort of skill, right? And that's just not the majority of people. The majority of people, they don't have that level of ability, they don't have that level of IQ, or they don't have that level of connection, or right, it could be a bevy of things, right? Certain people, like I would say me, for instance, one of the main things that kept me from doing good in school is how the school system is set up, right? Because I'm very strong in areas like reading, literature, history, right? But math has been like the thing I've been terrible at. Now that's a whole story to get into in regards to like, my school journey and stuff like that, and why that didn't work out too well for me. But it it's a very interesting thing that like the system is designed in this fashion where it's not really focused on what you're good and what you're great at and what you can offer to the world in those areas, right? And there's things that it doesn't really make sense for people to be doing like after a certain amount of time. Like somebody who's doing bad in math from the time they're in pre-K going up into high school, odds are they're not going to be some kind of mathematician. Odds are they're not going to be an accountant, right? And there are jobs out there that they could work or things that they could do that don't really require math like that beyond the calculator, right? But that's a whole nother thing to get into. I want to keep it towards what I was talking about, right? That's another story, another video for another day, right? We're talking about why can't the majority of people in America afford a 2 bedroom apartment, right? So I already went over that first, that wages haven't kept up with housing costs. Now I'm going to continue to go through the answers that ChatGPT gave me. Now it says, second, housing supply is constrained, especially affordable units. Zoning laws, limited new construction, and a focus on building higher end apartments mean there simply aren't enough mid or low cost 2 bedrooms being built, right? So there's a production issue, right, in regards to what even is available that would be affordable, right? Third, demand has changed. More people are living alone. Population has grown in certain cities, and remote work shifted people into already expensive areas, pushing prices up further, right? So basically, this is where the whole, I guess, what they call the gender wars and all the issues with dating that people have been having, this is where that comes into play, right? Because it's a corny saying, or I guess it's a bit corny of a reference, but it's like that old song where it says it takes two to make a thing go right, right? Because we have a society at this point where people have been taught to be so selfish and so individualistic in so many ways, right? That it's hard for people to group up and work together. It's hard for people to get together, right? And I always like to say, I've said in several videos that I have that, if people want to understand why this kind of thing ended up happening, it has to do with population control, because the world is overpopulated in a certain sense, right? It's overpopulated relative to the technology and everything that's available to take care of people, right? That's why there's so much fake food. That's why there's so much, like, basically you could look up CIA.gov population control needs far more attention, and it'll lead you to an article that kind of like explains this. But the highlight of this document on the official CIA website is that the most important thing to do in order to keep the population under control, to keep the population at a particular level, was to empower women economically, socially, and politically. That's not me saying that. I'm very, very serious, right? I swear to whatever God you believe in that you can go ahead and you can look up CIA.gov and type in population control needs far more attention. Or probably even just type in population control. Put it on Google. Article will pop up. If it leads you to a document that's a speech from Robert McNamara, you're in the right place, right? And you don't even have to read through the whole thing. Just copy it, put it in ChatGPT, tell it to tell you what it says, right? They don't hide these things no more because they know most people don't look up things and read. We just feel things and we emote. We just feel things and we get mad and we get angry. We just say things, right? But basically, all the things like certain things like the feminist movement, it wasn't done because the world was just advancing and we care more about women now. That wasn't the reason that was done, right? Right. That now it's a good emotional reason to get people along with it, but it's because that was the best way, according to them in this article, to keep the population under control, right? Now, that's a whole other thing for me to get into that I'm gonna definitely do a whole video on one day. But I just like to mention that because it ties into a whole lot of things, right? You'd be surprised how many things that one particular plan and motion from the World Economic Forum, right? What that ties into, right? Like how many things it ties into, right? Okay, but I want to continue on the response that ChatGPT gave me in regards to this, right? So let's see. Fourth, investors and corporations buying property can drive up prices. When large companies treat housing as an asset, they often prioritize profit over affordability, right? And I think there's a lot of people who've been talking about that, like how BlackRock, the company, how it's been buying up a lot of housing and stuff like that, or like when you have cases where you have people, because there's people in like the 1980s and 1990s and even early 2000s who quote unquote bought houses, right? And I say quote unquote because when you get a loan for a house and you have to pay off a mortgage, you don't really own that house. Whether you like it or not, you can call it your house all you want. You just have rights to it. You do not own that house until your mortgage is completely paid off. If I am wrong, stop paying your mortgage, and you're going to find out who owns that damn house. You're going to find it out real quick. Stop paying your car loan. Start your car note. Stop paying that, and you're going to find out very quickly who owns your car. It's not you, right? Any and all things that you have to get a loan for and that you're making payments on while it's supposedly yours is not really yours, right? But basically, what I'm getting at is that you have cases where there's people who got their houses and they're paying some crazy $10,000 mortgage, and either they die and they pass it down to their kids and their kids can't afford it, so they just get rid of it, right? Or they get to a point where they can't really afford it and the bank ends up having to take it, right? And then some company like BlackRock will go and buy it from the bank, right? That's something that's going on too. And a big part of that has to do because you have to really think about it, right? There's quite a few people whose kids went to school, they do everything right, everything properly. They get 10 times more schooling than their parents even got, right? But they're only making enough money to cover their own mortgage and their own rent. So God forbid something happened to mom and dad, or mom and dad can't afford their housing. They tell them straight up, like, look, I can't handle this. I have my own mortgage to pay. All right. I can't pay my $5,000 mortgage on top of the $8,000 mortgage for this house, right? So they just sell it off and they take whatever they can get from it, right? Or take nothing just to get rid of the headache, right? And that ties into the fact that people aren't making enough money, right? If things in America were actually progressing and going upwards, it wouldn't be a problem for a child who went and got more education than their parents and has a supposedly has a better job than what their parents had. It shouldn't be an issue for them to afford their parents' mortgage, right? But also on top of it, I think it says something about the whole system that we have people who are working their whole lives and they have a mortgage that they're paying off, and even into their retirement years, they still have to pay off their mortgage, right? That mortgage should be paid off before they even retired. To me, that says something about the system, right? Because see, and this is another tangent I'm kind of going on, but we love this American system so much. People love this stuff that America has allowed us to borrow so much. Because when you're paying for something that supposedly is yours, you're really just kind of borrowing it. You really just have rights to it, right? But we love the system so much that even if there's people in droves who are dealing with this same kind of issue, we blame every single one of those individuals before we even stop and consider that there might be something wrong with the system, right? Well, look at things like the school system that only a percentage of people make it through and get degrees like doctorates and all the masters and all that kind of stuff. And we look at the majority of people who don't make it through it and we say, "Oh, you guys just didn't try." Right? This is why these things persist. This is why they're not going to stop. This is why it's only going to get worse until we reach a breaking point, right? Until people actually realize that there is something sick and wrong with the system, right? But that's a whole nother thing for another day. Let me continue on with the response that ChatGPT gave me to this question, right? So the fifth reason that it gave, and the last one, is that the general cost of living is squeezing people. Even if rent stayed the same, higher costs for food, healthcare, debt, and transportation leave less money available for housing, right? Right, we all know right now that the food prices are about to skyrocket due to what's going on with the Iran war. At this point in time, I'm recording this, right? The price for fertilizer has already gone up, right? And common sense should tell you that whatever is grown with this fertilizer that's being put into the ground now, that's more expensive fertilizer than what was being paid for a month ago by farmers and stuff like that. Common sense will tell you that the food that gets grown out of that fertilizer is going to be sold at a price to even out what was paid for, right? So that's why you're not going to see there's already been a general raise in prices. Believe me, I'll tell you, there's boxes of cereal that I can get from the store that's $7, $8. That just 2, 3 years ago, those same boxes were about $5. 2, 3, 4 years before that, those same boxes were about $3.50, $4. Right? Things have doubled, and it's going to get even worse now because now the soil, the fertilizer that's being put into the soil or mixed in with, I don't do agriculture. I have family members that know more about that than I do. But basically, for the simple fact that the fertilizer now costs more, what's being grown with that fertilizer is going to cost more, right? Then you have healthcare, right? I worked in as a health insurance salesman for a little bit. Believe me when I tell you, the cost of healthcare is kicking ass. It is kicking people right in the ass, the cost of healthcare. Right? Because basically, uh, well, for one, insurance companies, just like every other company, they're trying to make as much money as they can. Right? But even for actual good healthcare, on average, majority of people can't afford it. Right? And the only people who really are getting insurance are people who have either some kind of like disease, some kind of condition, right, where they'll basically die if they do not have health care. Those are really most of the people who are going. Like it's so expensive. People who are relatively healthy and who probably go to the doctor like once a year, who eat right, they don't even care about it. Like, I don't have health insurance. I have zero health insurance, right? If something happens to me, I'm just gonna have to take the bill. I'm just gonna have to take the debt, right? And that's not a good thing, right? Because all these things that have been done for corporate greed, man, it's ridiculous. It is very, very ridiculous, right? So, and then you have, as I said, take the debt. Debt itself is one of the things that's squeezing people, right? Because debt being attached to your credit record, it messes you up in regards to trying to get a place and trying to get better cars and all that kind of stuff. It messes you up in regards to a lot of things, right? So there's people who have to handle their debt before they even handle anything else, right? And then you have transportation, of course, right? If you have the option of getting a used car for like 2, 3 thousand, that's going to need a bunch of fixes, right? So it's going to end up costing you about $9,000 to $10,000 anyway, right? Or you go and you put a down payment down like $5,000 to get a car, and also your credit needs to be good, or you need to find somebody that you know who has good credit that's willing to co-sign you, right? But basically, the cost for transportation, it's ridiculous. And particularly America is a very car-centric company. I mean, that maybe that was a Freudian slip. I meant to say country, but maybe America is just a company at this point, right? But America is very car-centric. The majority of America and places in America you need to drive. A good majority of America is set up like highways, right? Certain areas like in the Northeast get a little more like closed in because those areas, the earlier colonies of America, when America was first settling and was first being built up, a lot of them still have the same like road design, right? Like there's parts of New York where the concrete cracks and you could see like the old brick from like the old roads, like all the way from back in the day, right? But basically that's part of what's causing a lot of problems in regards to that, like the cost of transportation. It's the cost of car insurance, the cost of even fixing a car. Not if, but when something goes wrong with your car, right? God forbid something go wrong with your transmission. God forbid you need to get some new tires, right? Well, the tires are probably actually the easiest thing to fix. But any kind of like engine issues, transmission issues, and stuff like that, oof, God bless you, right? So even on this answer that ChatGPT gave, it says, so it's not that most people are quote unquote failing, it is that the system is producing rents faster than it's producing incomes or affordable housing. Right? I'll read that again. It's not that most people are quote unquote failing, it's that the system is producing rents faster than it's producing incomes or affordable housing. Right? These are things people don't think about. These are things people don't want to think about. People would much rather cry that's why I think so many things in regards to politics and so many things in regards to the media, it's all just distraction, right? And a lot of people online, and not to digress into this kind of thing, but to me, with all these issues afoot and what I know is going on with most people, so many people on the internet, y'all look like losers to me. Y'all look like big damn friggin' losers to me. Because even though most of you cannot even afford a damn two-bedroom apartment, and those of you who are making $5,000 to $10,000 per month, you can barely afford where you live at. Your living space is sucking up all your damn money. And you're probably never even going to pay off your mortgage. You're paying rent somewhere, so you're probably never even going to own a place. But you guys are worried about damn internet nonsense. People worry about things like Timothy Chalamet, whatever he said about ballet or whatever. That's why the government don't care about fixing none of this stuff, right? The government is not ever really going to take steps to fix these kinds of things until they see that people don't care about the bread and circus show anymore. Until they see that people are less concerned about the things going on with, because it's one thing if we examine stuff going on with celebrities with like an analytical mind, right? And right, but the amount of people who really in depthly feel these things as if Timothy Chalamet's comments about ballet and opera is really affecting their life, or if if some beef between two rappers is really affecting their life. Like I was very entertained by what happened with Drake and Kendrick Lamar, but you see guys on the internet arguing with each other about this thing as if Drake and Kendrick Lamar pay their rent, right? It's stupid, right? And like I said, it makes you look like a big damn friggin' loser. That most of you care more about what's lining the pockets of these celebrities and more about the drama between them and picking sides as if you're actually on their side, as if those people actually care about you, right? I'll say it again, you look like a big damn friggin' loser. Yeah. And yet again, that's not saying that you can't enjoy music from rappers or you can't enjoy acting and things of that nature, but it's the level of attention and the level of care that's given to those things as opposed to issues like this, right? These are the real big issues that are affecting us, right? Not whether or not somebody gets somebody pronouns right. Not whether or not some mentally challenged person is shouting the N word out at Michael B. Jordan and I can't remember the name of the other actor, right? When they're on stage at an award show in Britain. That's why these governments don't care. Because they look and say, wow, majority of these people cannot afford housing. But they must be okay because, they seem like they enjoy all this stuff and they care about this so much, right? And I can understand why people care about the Epstein files, but the amount of you that can't afford somewhere to live and you've dedicated a good half of your life online to arguing with people about these Epstein files and talking about the Epstein files and saying you want to see the Epstein files, Epstein files, Epstein files. Frig the damn Epstein files. Give me Epstein's money. Keep the Epstein files and give me Epstein's money. If the government called me in and told me I could see all the Epstein files, or they can give me $100 million, or not even 100,000. I'll tell them lock away all the Epstein files. I don't know nothing. I don't want to know nothing. Give me the money. And to people who are so concerned about the Epstein files and what was happening to the little kids, I hope you're that concerned with what's happening to the little kids in your area. Because if you go and you look up the PDF file map, and it will show you all the PDF files in your area. I hope you're going hard to stop them and watch them like you're going hard about Epstein. And yet again, I'm not saying people can't think about these things or talk about these things or care about these things, but don't do that while ignoring the things that are actually affecting your damn life. Because you look like a big damn friggin' loser. You look stupid. This is supposed to be about why rent is unaffordable. Now, interestingly enough, I asked ChatGPT, because I always try to bring in solutions and conclusions, right? Now, obviously, one of my solutions is to, kind of put a glaze over your eyes in regards to all the celebrity news and all the drama and all the stuff in the media that they put towards you, right? Because it's not really actually affecting your life, but it's affecting your emotions, I guess, and maybe that affects your life. But yeah, but I'd asked ChatGPT what is going to be done to fix this and when. Now, it says the short answer is things are being attempted, but nothing big enough or fast enough to fix it anytime soon. Oh, isn't that amazing? Isn't that nice to know that this is just going to keep continuing, right? And they claim I say they claim because I don't know if I believe this first one. It says the government is trying to build more housing, which is the main fix. I don't know. We seem to be more focused on dropping bombs in the Middle East than fixing this housing issue, right? So it says there's new bipartisan bills from last year and this year that focus on making it easier and faster to build housing, funding affordable housing projects, converting empty buildings into apartments, encouraging duplexes and townhomes and stuff like that, right? It says there's one law expansion that could help finance 1.2 million new affordable units over 10 years, right? Apparently that comes from a website called enterprisecommunity.org. That's where that information comes from. Second, they said they're cutting zoning restrictions. This is, quiet but very important. They said some states are changing rules so developers can build more densely, like duplexes instead of single family homes, because with the amount of single people that you have at this point, you're going to need more duplexes instead of single family homes because people are single, they ain't making families, right? So there's new laws that are allowing the building of housing without long approval processes, right? And supposedly this is something that a lot of experts in this area they agree that actually will work, and it kind of makes sense, I guess, because getting them done in a quicker amount of time gets people in there quicker, or more available spaces for people who are looking for them, right? And also more things being available drives down the cost of everything relatively, right? They're trying to limit big investors, kind of. Now, this one I'm gonna just skip over. I don't believe that at all. America's all about big money, big paper. Whoever got it, they're gonna get it, right? Whoever got it, they're gonna get it, right? Meaning, whoever has got the money, they're gonna get the stuff they want, right? Fourth, they're saying subsidies and assistance, which is a band-aid, not a fix. Programs like housing vouchers help people afford rent, but only 1 in 4 eligible people actually get help. So that's a non-solution. Uh, Lower interest rates and financing tricks. Lower mortgage rates can make buying easier, quote unquote buying. Ideas like 50-year mortgages. Whew. Wow. People out here doing 50-year mortgages? 50-year mortgage. Oh man. I have a lot of comments about that one, but that would push this video to be an hour long if I keep going, right? So it goes on. So in a section where it says, so when will it actually get better? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The best case timeline is 5 to 10 years, there will be noticeable improvement. Or 10 to 20 years, real affordability correction, right? Now, why? They say the U.S. is short 4 million homes in comparison to the amount of people that need them. Building housing takes years. Local governments they control zoning, and many homeowners don't want prices to go down. Now, that might be the biggest issue, maybe of all of it, right? The greed in that, right? And of course, I can understand if you're a person that, let's say in the year 2005, you got a house for like $500,000 and you took like 5-10 years to pay off your mortgage. You finally got it paid off in like 2015, and now at this point in time, your house is valued at $1.5 million. I can understand you not wanting the housing prices to go down, but everything affects everything, right? And also, how are you going to sell your $1.5 million home if nobody can buy it? Oh, yeah, right. You could just sell it to BlackRock, I guess. So, going on in this, little write-up that ChatGPT gave me for asking how are these issues going to be solved, it says the deeper issue nobody says directly. Even if everything works, prices might stop rising fast, but they may not drop significantly because housing is treated as an investment, not just shelter. And politicians are pressured to protect homeowners' wealth instead of lowering prices. And without no sugarcoating, the real answer is yes, fixes are being worked on, but they're slow, politically complicated, not aggressive enough. So for most people, affordability will improve slightly, but not dramatically anytime soon. Welcome to the world. Welcome to America. And this is why the majority of people in America cannot even afford a 2-bedroom apartment.